Roma's got you covered. Pleasure Pulse, every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Only on Television Radio 96.1 FM. Don't miss out. Your sex education journey starts this Tuesday with Roma as your guide.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and I'm so happy to have you joining me here for another Tuesday, another conversation on sex and something. And today we're talking about sex and modern relationships. But before we actually talk about sex and modern relationships, let's take a short break so you can let everybody know that Pleasure Pulse is live. You can find us on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on ZIZ's website if you click the Listen Radio option on the website. So share all them options, all them ways you could tune in with your friends, with your family, with your partner, everybody. Do that, and then we come back and start tonight's conversation. So stay tuned.
Radio 96.1 FM.
To Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you're joining me on ZIZ. And we are going to talk about sex and modern relationships. I have my guest here, no stranger to the show.
Hi, good night, everyone. For tonight, I'm a relationship expert. So, yes, I'm ready to get in. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Deloma.
Hi, Deloma. Welcome to Pleasure Pulse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's all, that's how there is this on the podcast. Anyways, so tonight we're talking about, again, sex and modern relationships. And I think at different points we have kind of hinted at, dipped our feet a little bit in some aspects of modern relationships, but I wanted to kind of bring it together in an intentional and structured way so that we explicitly talk about some of the things that we see now. 'Cause obviously, when we are talking about dating and relationships and so we're talking about no. There's some things that we might know about our parents and other relationships, but not from first-hand experience, right? So we typically are talking about modern relationships, but I wanted to focus on it a bit and get into some of the things that we think characterize modern relationships. We've talked about dating, so that's part of it. But yeah, some of the things that we think are associated with modern dating, some of the ways that it is different from previous generations dating, some of the things that make it good or maybe not so good. Yeah, so let's start with what we see are some things that characterize today's relationships, or that inform or shape or influence today's relationships.
So I think we spoke about earlier social media. I grew up in the time where YouTube couples was a thing.
Like Diera and Ken?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it was Ken,
I
right?
think that, if they're still together?
Ken was his name, right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Not in together.
I used to like to watch Chris and Queen. She's a whole singer now, and then it was a whole thing when it...
My bad.
Oh my But yeah, I grew up in that time.
Yeah.
And I think that in terms of what relationship looks like, it kind of creates a perception where is And these YouTube channels, they never really spoke about dating. They just showed like the day in life, and the day in life was pretty much a fake, scripted kind of portion of it. And then you would just see them pop up with all these relationship problems. Like maybe one of them get caught cheating, and then it's like, whoa, where did this come from? So I think that maybe in the modern way, it's more like the look of things, and we don't really know how to have certain conversations or to address certain things. So it's maybe more keeping up an image more so than the actual inner work in terms of getting to know a partner. But with that, what did I say? A counterculture. I think there's a counterculture to that, to where more people are trying to be more, as you said, intentional about dating. So knowing like the questions to ask and these kind of things when you're looking to date someone, making sure that that person aligns with your interests, your personality, your long-term goals in life in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are two really good points, especially the social media part. So it's like it started with YouTube relationships, and then it became like Instagram relationships, TikTok relationships, not really Twitter and stuff, but especially those image and video based platforms. Then they kind of showed up there, and we know some popular ones recently who seemed good, and then like Christy and Desmond, you know those two?
Oh.
Yeah, that's one of the latest ones. And then remember a couple years ago, it had the guy who had the Christian wife, and he used to be online giving relationship advice, and then I can't remember.
You mean the trad wife couple?
No, I can't remember his name. Dark skin. I can't remember his name. But yeah, that became a thing. There were other YouTube couples. Not that we're gonna go through the whole list of YouTube couples, but like what you said about then offline things being different, or learning some things that were never presented to us. Even what her name is, Jamie, and what's the name is? I can't remember. Sudanese, I think, girl, early YouTube couples, model looking. Yeah, anyways.
And that was an interracial relationship?
Yes.
Okay, I know.
Yeah, you know who I mean, yeah. So, like, so many of them, right? And we rarely ever, as you said, got a look into the real life, full life of being in a relationship. It was just something. So we were like, we were measuring our relationships against what people were choosing to present to us. And I also thought of when you talked about dating. I saw this thing recently where people are trying to come off the apps. Well, people have been trying to come off the apps for a while, and they're having their friends present them to potential partners. Like, instead of you presenting yourself, they're asking their friends to do a PowerPoint presentation to say why my friend is amazing, like to sell their friend.
So is this like a blind dating thing?
No, it's like a group. So it's an event, where you go to, and you got people seeking relationships there, and people seeking relationships there. And hold on, we're doing some tech text. So yeah, people seeking relationships there, and instead of you, like, normally in dating, even if it was speed dating, you would have to be the one meeting everybody and saying something about yourself. Now you have a friend to do it for you. You are there still, but your friend is there to be like, this is my friend, blah, 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 and say all the good things about them. Yeah.
Right? Because what I'm guessing is somewhat like a blind dating, speed dating, kind of a mix of both.
As in, you're just meeting the person there,
right.
But you don't have to really do the work yourself to present yourself, which could be challenging
But
sometimes.
speed dating or like a blind date is something like I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing it, but it's like the more I engage, I would say maybe males, they just scare me because
Mm.
it's like I'm like, okay, you know, I like you in terms of, you seem like you have a good job, you're at a decent age, you're not too young, like, you're at that point where you don't have, like, when I say you're a bit more settled
Mm-hmm.
then.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like, you or your peers or people who are single, they're like, whoa, so being single is a part of it. And I'm like, yes.
Wait, what? Oh,
That's the thing.
you mean people?
To participate in the speed dating.
Oh, so they think they could come even though they have a partner?
Right. And I'm like, no.
Oh,
This is
okay,
for
yes. That's
people
not.
who
This
are
is not the first
single,
time. Yeah, this.
who are looking to meet other
This is not the
single
first
people.
time I'm hearing this.
Right.
This is actually a phenomenon.
But I think it's a bit maybe more challenging to do something like that, maybe in a smaller island setting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I think just in general, it'll take some work to expand.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah, we
Caribbean
ain't necessarily
culture to something
reached
like
the
that.
reached the stage of organizing an event where friends present their friends and you have enough people who like there's already possibility for compatibility in the crowd. And so I know they had a speed dating event a few years ago, but what I remember, it was very like woman. So it was for heterosexual couples. It was very woman heavy, and some of the guys who were there to make up numbers is the impression that I got. So it was also like your chances of coming out
I
with
wonder if there were
somebody.
any successful like matches.
I don't
outside of
know,
that.
because there's a lot that goes into
And I did see it, but at the time, I was
Yeah.
in a relationship. I
Right.
was actually in a real relationship, so I don't know what did that. But I was like, damn, I missed my opportunity. But when I saw it, I was like, wow. So there are actually
Yeah.
people who may be interested, but I'm not surprised. Like it's more women
Mm-hmm.
than men, and I think even like we're in a different dynamic now. Women, we know what we want, we know what we are going after. So I think in terms of the dating world, we are more vocal about what it is we are seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just like, oh, we're waiting for guys to approach us. Like even in some cases, like if we see a guy who we're interested in, we would approach them. Like I think that's maybe something that kind of has shifted in
Yes.
modern dating. Like women, we having, I don't know what the word would be, but us just being more in charge in that area. And we have options. I mean, maybe like things with like, what it is? That's Spike Lee.
She's Gotta
series.
Have It,
Yeah.
which
I
comes from a movie.
think
You should watch the movie, but go
I
ahead.
watched the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I did watch
The
the
series.
series. So I think like things like that shows like, we are stepping out more. Because I think when the movie came out, it was like unheard of. But
Yeah.
I think it was more like a modern portrayal of the modern woman in the dating. Like we have options. It's not like the man just looking around, we have options. We have, dating choices. Yeah, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, not at all. Please continue if you need to. And yeah, I think part of all of that, all of those are things that factor into modern relationships, especially the part about women having more choices and options. No, because you're also adding in the reality of financial independence and stability. So whereas before, you really did have to find a good match to help improve your economic status, because certain jobs were not going to be available to you because you're a woman. So if you want to start families, blah blah blah, like two people had to come together. Now you have a lot more women. One, when you meet the woman, she done got she house. She done got she care. She done been working for however many years. You might meet her when she's top of whatever career she's in. So we also have a lot more career driven and career focused women, and that is showing up in what relationships are looking like, because even though we have like the trad wives and so coming back, and it's interesting because people are also talking about like the resurgence of Christianity and Christian nationalism and all these things, which is happening alongside the changes that feminism and other movements are bringing in. So while you're having more women being like, you know what, I'm opting out, you're also having some women like, I am fully investing into my husband, my children, barefoot and pregnant. I saw a video today. She was 23 with on her 7th pregnancy. Yeah, so a lot of people were in the comments like, because that no, and the thing is too, no, as part of modern relationships, I would guess some of them were twins, but even still,
That's a lot.
but it's a lot no, right? So that's also, you know, a feature of modern relationships. No, when we see somebody with 23 and 7 children, everybody is taking a second look. You know, I remember some time ago I was talking to some folks who work at the hospital, and they were like, typically if they find somebody who young, and maybe even, yeah, just say young, like under 25, 30 also, and they're under like 5th, 6th child, people start to be like, so have you considered? Because those things aren't really what is common now, but years ago it was common to have 16 children.
I mean, I'm not gonna tell anybody what to do with their uterus, but I'm just like, how can you afford? I'm struggling to afford
yourself.
and myself. How can you afford 7 kids?
I don't want to make any pronouncements, but I think things like there are lots more opportunities to make money now, and I feel like a lot of them with big families to make money from content creation. Remember the show 17
John and Kate plus 8.
John and Kate plus 8, 16 kids and counting.
Yeah.
All of them, and so
But
where
I think
it was just
from my understanding, okay, John and Kate plus 8, I think that she wasn't famous, they weren't wealthy, but I think based on the fact that she had the 8 in one go, like she got a lot of media attention, and I guess that's kind of where it took off, like fame-wise. But a lot of those
she's a different one.
Right.
People who have multiple pregnancies.
They come from those
conservative, yeah.
Mormon, and they generally kind of already, as I said, start with some kind of BS. So.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting.
Would that be a proper representation of what we say is the modern relationship? Because
which part? The trad wives and so?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say so. That's why I say it is resurfacing. There's like that resurgence alongside what we typically would count as or describe as modern relationships. So to me, that is like trad wife, traditional wife. So it's like traditions coming back for some people for some reason. You know, nefarious. Sorry. Reasons, but
I'm not against like the idea of a trad wife or being a housewife. Like, I mean, I watch The Real Housewives on Bravo. Like, I would love to live that life, but
that's a different kind of housewife.
Different to
a trad wife because them they're churning butter,
right?
Which is cool. It's to me, and they're also, you know, we just say barefoot and pregnant. Like that's cool for some folks, but I say nefarious
and
because
maybe that's what they really want.
I
to
think
do.
there's
like,
a
they're into
deeper.
The
there's a deeper intention. I think people also, some of it is about really returning to traditional historical ways of doing things that tended to be healthy, and so I definitely support the cooking your thing from scratch and so and so and so. It's not a reality that's available or accessible to everybody. So yeah, it's, and there are different kinds of trad wives too, right? So
Well, okay.
Yeah. Not to
derail-
dwell on it.
No, not to derail the
Yeah,
conversation.
okay, sorry, derail, please.
But I think if we really want to be honest about discussing modern relationships, especially in the Caribbean, it's going to have to take like a more feminist conversation, because women and our opportunities have shifted drastically, and I think that is what has shaped our view on relationships. Because as you said, like, we have our own resources, so ain't like I do with you because I need your things, and we're in a situation where socially we're still teaching them the traditional ideology of dating, but then how
In reality,
it's not meshing with what's happening now. Because even look at sex, like, for a woman to, I mean, go out in a party and skin out and, you know, find a guy, and if she want to hook up with the guy, like, that is unheard of.
Yeah.
Like, she would have a scarlet letter, be like, shame.
Yeah.
But no, I mean,
to some extent, there's still some shame.
there's still
that,
some shame,
yeah.
but I mean, we have a bit.
Right. And I think people have those conversations too, more openly. Like, I was somewhere and I just overheard somebody talking about whether sex position and so was happening, and we're not talking about 60-year-old men or mature women. I'm talking about young people, which is also like surprising, but still like, wow, you know, like we've gotten to this point where women in particular specifically can talk openly about sex, because typically like talking about sex was the domain of men. So I hear you definitely, you know, about the feminist perspective. But yeah, so schooling, all of these things. But the interesting thing is women would have all of those accolades and so on and so on. So, and as you said, the reality of the relationship, the partner, especially the male partner, for a lot of them, there are still those expectations that even though both of you work and have an 8 to 4, and so you will come home and cook. That I will
Even
message
though she
you.
makes more money. She has to cook. She has to clean. Sorry, I got flashbacks.
That I would message you and be like, "Where's lunch? Did you prepare it? Whatever, you know, like." Irrespective of what the situations are, that you will be at home maybe all day playing game. Okay, maybe you have a job, right? You came home earlier, but the expectation...
They do be home all day.
Yeah. But the expectation...
I'm not session, but I think for us, because it's the demographic of women that we fall into, like maybe we would see a lot of these things, especially in our peers. And let's be real, I think based on the population, it's more women than men. And then when you look at it, it's more women going off getting college degrees. It's more women occupying those higher level jobs now in the Caribbean. But then what you still kind of find is that in a way they're still having to, I don't want to say settle, but maybe you have to not expect to find somebody who matches
you in all ways.
Right.
Which is, I think, okay. I think the issue is that, like you say, you know, if people are socialized into those traditional values,
right,
and that even though, and not just socialized into the traditional values, but people expect and there's pressure from your community, from your peers, and so your friends them laughing after you because your woman earns more than you earn, or is progressing faster in her career than you are, or y'all seem like a mismatch or whatever. So I find in some of those relationships, you find some, unfortunately, degree of violence.
Abuse.
Because people have to find ways to assert
Dominance.
and that is sometimes the way that they can, because they can't do it financially, they can't do it whatever, so they do it in that way. But yeah, I think even though you have all of those changing material realities for women in terms of the social life, in terms of the relational connections, the expectations are still the same. So you would stay at home all day, and then when she come home tired from a long day of keeping the roof over your head, you're like, the dishes in the sink to wash, the children need to look after, because
That's
that
the
is in their
expectation.
mind the traditional role of a woman. So some relationships haven't evolved, but modern
But
relationships,
I would say this because maybe, in the old days, it had to be like that based on survival. So maybe some persons grow up, yes, my mother and my father worked, but maybe my mother still came home and, did the housework because that was the expectation. But now we're in the modern times. I'm a relationship expert.
yeah.
How do we move away from that?
It's not just like a one day, but I was going to say you do have a lot of it happening already. So maybe here in the Caribbean, I wouldn't talk so much about like stay at home moms or stay at home dads or whatever, because in spaces like these, everybody has always had to work, typically, right? Like, even if you stayed at home, it's sometimes because your work was done at home, like whatever uh, sewing or cooking or baking or so you did to make money, you did it in your house, or you did domestic work for somebody else or whatever. But in the Caribbean, we've never had a situation where it was like, culturally or generally, the men go out to work and the women stay at home, right? And in something on top, but like, no, men staying at home and looking after the children and women going out to work, because in this economy everybody has to go to work, right? In the US and other places like that, you'll find that in many relationships, whoever has greater earning power is the one who goes out to work, and somebody stays home with children because childcare is expensive. So like, we're dealing with different things, but it of course requires resocialization. Like, it has to start with what we learn and what we come to accept is what we teach. Teach, not that people born, women ain't born knowing how to look after children. They learn it, right? Recognizing that those are essential skills for everybody who desires to be a parent, who desires to have a home, blah, 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 blah. So it starts with resocialization and having different kinds of conversations. It starts with you in your relationship choosing to do something different. What do you think as a relationship expert?
As a relation, what I'm thinking is that, okay, so what have we learned, like, from looking at all the modern relationships, especially like with social media? If we can take something away from it, even though they may not be the best example, is that there is no like right relationship. You have to make the relationship work for
You,
are
based on who is in it and what the
right.
skills are of the people in the relationship.
Right. And I think another issue, even though it's something that always comes up, is communication and
Yeah.
having open conversations, because I think a lot of people get into relationships if we're having conversations in terms of what is your partner's long-term interest career-wise? Do they want kids? How much kids do they want? How soon do they want to have kids? What do their finances look like? What are your financial goals? Because maybe you might have money, yes, but maybe what they want to invest and put their money towards might not be what you want to invest in and put your money towards. And I think these are the important conversations that we need to have before really getting deeply involved in someone.
I agree. And I would also say that in addition to all of those things, because as you mentioned, there was a point where the relationship was just about survival. I think now people are seeing not so much like relationship, but companionship and fulfillment. So people now, as you said, ain't just about money or whatever, but what deeper thing can you offer me? No, we see a lot more people talking about their mental health journeys, about their journeys with spirituality, about living non-traditional lives, and all kinds of different things too. And they are working those things into their relationships. So are we on the same page when it comes to how we view the world? People, I think, are increasingly looking at things like politics. Like, what are your views on X, Y, Z, and so are you a flaming homophobe? Or, I think people are also considering those things more. And this also connects to like what we were saying earlier in terms of modern relationships, seeing a lot more queer representation. I think social media has opened up and maybe made people also feel more comfortable and safe to show not everybody, but to show their relationships. So you remember a couple years ago when it was a girl proposing to another girl somewhere here? I can't remember, in a restaurant. And some weeks ago I was on TikTok and it was two girls and they were talking about how much they love each other. You just see them you just see queer couples, gay couples, lesbian couples out, and not one over here and one over here. You see them dancing, they're hugging up, all of this and so. So I think that's also part of what we're seeing more in modern relationships, just more of a willingness to be open.
Right. And I think it's like more conversations happening, because I think a lot of the times when we talk too, we are looking at the dynamic of a heterosexual monogamous partnership, but now we have more couples speaking about their relationship being open. And I mean, being open isn't a bad thing, because for some, like, this is
that is right,
but again, conversation.
Yeah. And it also goes back to deciding what you want for your relationship and what works best for your relationship. So that is both the shape of the relationship, the kind of relationship you want to be in, the roles that you will each take on and play. Because I remember years ago when I had a lecturer, she used to be like, how we had speed dating and science CFBC. It was debating society. It was like to raise funds. Typically, like, both of you are students, nobody got money, right? Like, both of you had to ask your parents for money. But even when you're going to university, even after university, she was like, who pays this? Who got money? So it wasn't you pay because you demand, you not cover it because I'm the woman.
I don't like that.
And I know you wasn't going to like it. I know you like to go with your puss and all in your pussy's lip gloss. I've seen the videos.
That is me. That is my
and that's okay.
Personal,
that's okay. And you will I think there's always somebody there's always a person there's somebody for everybody.
Right.
Right? So it's finding the person who wants to provide that for you, not forcing the person who doesn't want to or can't to do it because that's what you want, right? So that connects to the finding a person that's a match for you. Not me skipping over all of our questions. So, our parents and grandparents' relationships are sometimes romanticized. especially online. I just see people talking about, and not just online, but in real life too, people talking about, going back to some practices from the past, like courting, for one. People.
Arranged marriages.
I don't really hear that because I think that still happens in some spaces, but courting for one. There a talk about how long the marriages lasted. So it's usually length and not necessarily quality of the relationship. So do you think the romanticization is valid? Let me not, cause romanticization is usually a bad thing, but do you think the call for returning to the olden days relationships wise is valid?
Okay, when people do that, they're maybe saying that because statistically, maybe there were more marriages back then. But then, if we really had to look at how much of them were happy, successful marriages, that's where the question mark is. Because, I mean, let's be real, nobody nowadays is really getting married. Like, to me,
the rates have dropped.
It's fewer. And all of us, our parents and grandparents might have been married, were the best examples. I mean, from my eyes, let me not talk on anybody.
Sorry.
But, no, I don't want what they had at all, at all. I want the opposite of that. I mean, of course, I would like to be married and, that, but was it the best? Did it look the happiest? Question mark.
Right. And I think too, like, not just the rates have gone down, but in addition to that, I believe from what I saw, people are also getting married later generally and settling down later. So now when I see like two people in their early 20s get married, I'm like, oh, because it's so surprising to see. No, whereas years ago, 19, 20, 21, 22, them is the marriage. 23, the marriage ages. Even when you reach like 25, 25, you become a sprinter, right? But no, getting married at 25, for some people, just seems like I'm still a baby, Yeah. So I think those are some of the things that have changed. And as you mentioned, in some of the things that happened in those relationships, some of the abuse that happened in those relationships, all the outside children. The outside children.
I mean, even I
shouldn't say outside children. Children that happened outside, not with the wives.
Maternal grandparent.
You mean our specific?
Yeah. I mean, we're just looking at a situation.
You mean mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking at a situation
not
like
Teresa
that.
catching strays.
No, but what I was gonna say was that union, it was something to me. Maybe I don't know the full story, but it looked like it was something like survival. We have this, we're together for the kids, but then I can't be with you. I have to live
somewhere else and have a different family.
Right. You're putting all the business up. Sorry. But
we have to be honest on the podcast.
Right, because we're experts.
And that we also asking for people to be honest.
Right, that is
true.
So, I mean, is that...
And that's nothing unique to that situation, That's something that happened kind of often, right? So the role that migration plays in family shape. And so I think modern relationships too, you're having a lot more people who are living apart. And it not meaning that the relationship is not going well, but people just choosing, to be long-term, long distance, things like that.
I mean, she can't answer, but it always made me question, like, was it really a marriage or was it something like we dated, we had kids, we married, so we just gotta...
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't know. But they had a lot of relationships that were like that and with people who didn't believe in divorce. So under no circumstances would we get divorced. It was okay, we are together, we ain't really together, are we together? And every 2 years, 3 years, I get a child that I have not birthed, but is yours. I think things like that kind of were pat and maybe parcel expected, because I know that for a certain point it was like, these are the things that you need to do to keep a man. These are the things that you need to do to satisfy a man. These are the things that you need to do to ensure that your man doesn't stray and blah, 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 blah. There were so many messages about those kinds of things. And the responsibility and the blame used to end up on the woman a lot. So it's like anything happening to her in the home, and it still happens sometimes. But I think then it was a lot more mainstream and common. But what did you do? What did you do for him to XYZ, blah, blah, blah?
Because even, I think, like, back then, as you said, when we have the conversation about the outside kids, it's always the man.
Yeah.
I don't know of any instance where it was the woman who, I guess, stepped
Yeah.
out and brought a child back
Fewer
home.
instances, yeah.
But
People would talk about jackets and stuff, but
But
fewer
it's not
instances.
like but a jacket, in this instance of a jacket, the man doesn't acknowledge the child or acknowledge that it's his biological child,
oh, you mean the
the
man?
affair partner.
Okay.
But with the man, he's going out and he bringing his outside
Yeah,
kid
into his inside
home
home.
and making you
Yeah.
wear it as
That happened in Fences. You ever watch Fences with
Uh-uh.
Denzel Washington?
So, no, I didn't watch that.
Okay, yeah, that kind
But
of
I
happened.
know that happened
Right,
in
in
some-
real life and
yes.
not just in the
Yeah.
movies. Yeah, right. And for some women, they just had to
Go
do
along
it
with
because for the family unit, the earning power, like lots of different reasons, not believing in separating, not even really being a thing, like a truly accessible thing then, because even though, unless you already have your own stuff, separating and leaving half of the contributions, or 100% of the contributions, or 75% of the contributions, and going is really difficult. So, and that was kind of many people's experience, lot or whatever. So, very different. I mean, not so very different. Mostly different now. Yeah. Okay. So, what would you say is we said that this is a thing that happened, but what would you say is the biggest positive development in modern relationships?
As I said, the expansion, like, relationships are not like this one view that we have of the heterosexual man and the heterosexual woman of the same race. Like, it could be whatever.
Anything.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it just really takes, to me, what could make a relationship successful is just to have open conversations and to really try to figure out if this person is your partner, if they align with you, and willing to have the conversations and do the work to make it work. You can't lean on people and be like, oh, I see they did this. No, because that may not work for you and your personality and, what you're into. Maybe some couples are okay with being in open relationships because they're okay with that. But if you're a more jealous person and that is just not something that you believe in, you won't or you shouldn't practice that in your relationship.
Yeah. I think If I had to answer this question,
What's
I-
the question?
the biggest positive development.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I'm saying biggest, and
I
I'm
thought
like,
it was gonna be like open relationships. I was gonna leave it.
oh no. Oh, you thought I was asking you a question?
No, I thought you was gonna talk. I don't know.
Oh,
Back to what
me
we
know.
was, yeah, back to what I was talking about.
Now I asked you biggest positive development. I'm like, I don't want to say biggest. So I asked you an unfair question. But I would say one of the things that, this is how I should have framed it. One of the things that really appeals to you, that you strongly connect with, that resonates with you from modern relationships. I think for me, it is how people, there's a lot of talk about decentering men. That's kind of connected but separate. But it is how the relationship, for a lot of people, like their romantic relationship doesn't become their whole life. So they still invest heavily in their friendships. They still invest heavily in their social and community groups around them. They're still spending time with their family and this. I think like then it used to be, you reach this age, you get married, you leave the nest. You're supposed to be like running back to your mother's house, your parents' house, also, like you're supposed to be with your partner. I think no. Like we see it, couples out, and he over here, one over here with their friends, the other one over there with their friends. Sometimes they're not even at the same events. They're on different missions. They're doing different things and stuff. But I especially like how people are still showing up in their friendship groups, still maintaining their friendship groups. Because I feel like what I find is, like, look at some of the older people who were married, whether their partner is still alive or whatever. A lot of their lives, like, they just kind of converge into each other, and other relationships stop existing. So like your partner becomes then your only friend. I think what happens is, if that person dies, if y'all get divorced or whatever, then people go back to their friend groups if something happened, but not that like you see that parallel equal.
Okay, so what I'm getting, because I don't want to, I want to make sure I'm looking at it with a current lens. It's not necessarily about, as you said, putting the man on a pedestal and making it about him or even the female. Like, it's for you to have a life outside of your relationship, because then it creates a balance. Because I think maybe a lot of people put a lot of pressure on their relationship
and expectations to fulfill every need,
right? And realistically speaking,
that just can't happen.
It can't happen.
Yeah, so I would say
I think that's a really good point too, because I think I know, like, maybe it's more easier for women to get wrapped up in the fairy tale and us pouring our all into a relationship, or even for a guy, like the female might start to get jealous and be like, oh, well, you always want to be out with your friend, but you have to understand, like, it's important for them to maintain these relationships to be able to come home to you. And maintaining those relationships and also hobbies. So I think that people are able still to like practice a lot of what they practiced before they got married or in a relationship or whatever still. So what I tend to see now is people believing, at least, that they can have it all, and some actually having it all. So having very solid and active and committed friendships, having very reliable and reliable and developed hobbies. People still, like, I feel like the expectation was kind of that,
once you got into a serious relationship or married, because the expectation was married, it wasn't even serious relationship, which is kind of compared to now, people are seeing marriage as less of an option, but still wanting that deep commitment. So still going after that deep commitment, but not choosing the marriage road. Whereas I think typically then, once marriage was available to you and you chose to be with somebody, then you kind of had to or were expected to get married. So I think I'm seeing people still pursuing their passions. And so, sometimes we just see some people and be like, well, you out here by yourself, where is this person or whatever? And it's like, they're doing their own thing. Like, we're not attached at the hip in ways that people expected.
Okay, so what do you think about people who are in relationships and going to like a fete and like Juve and those kind of events by themselves?
It's interesting that you said that, because I have a friend who told me that, they and their partner do, I think they said Juve separately and parade day. So, like, both of them going to parade day and they're in a troop, but not necessarily the same troop, and they're with each other. I find it fascinating. I don't know if I could necessarily say yes, I could, but I think the thing with me is, because in my adult years of going to Juve, I've tended to be in long distance relationships. It's like you come into this country and we're spending this time apart. But if you're both resident here and you live together, spend every day together, it might be an easier thing to do. I think it just depends. Like, for example, Music Fest. Music Fest, Thursday night. You might go with your friends. I might go with my friends. But Saturday night, I might want us to be together because, Saturdays we're like lovers, music, and I want to be. So I think I find it interesting.
The reason why I brought it up too, because I realized like culturally it's something that's kind of frowned upon, especially for women. Because I've had conversation with, like, let's say people who are like, I would say mid-40s up, and they're like, if I got a woman, she can't go carnival. Like, that's her carnival.
That's not,
but they're very much still active in carnival and the parties. So I'm like, well, why the woman can't participate?
So the example that I gave you is people who, for the most part, agreed to it, are aware to it. Like, nobody dictating to the other person, you can't do this or you have to do X, Y, Z. We might have differences of opinion, like, I prefer to be together and they prefer not to be together, but it's okay. Right? Let's just go out and enjoy ourselves. Maybe you come to a compromise. You say, okay, this year we'll do it apart, next year we'll do it together. I don't know. But the situations where you like, she must, she has to, they cannot.
Right.
No, concerning.
I mean, for me, I think it's always best to, okay, you know what? Let me not say that. Relationship expert, sorry.
And I think you check in, even if you go separately, I think you check in.
But honestly, like, for me, this is for me. I'm 4'7". And usually, my partners are always going to be taller than me. And I don't expect you to have no strong mega knees to be stupid on dancing and the whole thing too. So I want you to enjoy yourself. So if you want to find somebody and dance on them, by all means.
Yeah.
I'm not going to expect you to get a person join up in the...
That's too far.
Yeah. But, I mean, and even if you do that, I mean... who you coming to home to? Like, sometimes
that sounds like a traditional olden days relationship. He coming home to me.
No, but I mean, I'm not bothered.
Okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
People have different ideas of what is okay with them. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I think we did cover all of these questions, in terms of what we see as characterizing today's relationships, social media, feminism, women's progress, equality, all of those things that our grandparents, parents' relationships are a bit romanticized, and the experiences are not necessarily things that we are desirous of repeating. That even though some people who come from marriages, parents who were married, or happily or not, don't desire marriage themselves. So curious about what makes that, I may want to say shift, but what makes that choice, like what has informed that choice. What we say, some of the, I think you talk about like communications as key ingredients for successful relationships, and the biggest positive development. And I think we also touched on like some things that are missing from modern relationships, because communication was one of those things. And some people will say that people ain't as devoted now as they were then. At the first sign of trouble, they run. Whereas people stuck through it, came out on the, I don't know, better side then. So that's something worth pondering. Pondering. Yeah. Any final words?
Final words. So I'm not a relationship expert. I'm just here.
You're saying that at the end of the show.
No, because I maybe there are some people who like, she really had a relationship expert. No.
And they might be calling you.
Yeah, like
I'm coming to you about their issues or their questions. Are you open to that?
I mean, if you just want a listening ear,
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
But you're not.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So,
but any parting word, just be happy. I think more than anything, it's what makes you happy in a relationship. Yeah.
Those are good. Yeah, good parting words. And I would add that it's okay to desire something that, it's okay to desire whatever you desire, right? Once you are able to ensure that you can find a person who equally desires what you desire, that there's consent, that everybody is aware of all that is happening. Some people might want a relationship where it is, okay, I'm the man and I prefer to take care of everything in the home. That's okay, right? And so this conversation wasn't to be like modern relationships are better and traditional relationships are not, but just to examine some of the things that are features of each era and see how some things might or might not work for you. So I encourage you to do some more reflection on your own relationships, the relationships that you want to manifest, because you, even if you might not be in one now, you can still be clear on what you want, what you will accept from one. So think about it. Yeah, do some more reading and so about modern relationships. Think about your friendship. That's one thing I would encourage. Even I encourage you to choose anything else, but I would encourage you to stay close to your friends and stay investing in your friends, because our friendships are usually our most reliable and long-lasting relationships.
Oh, and I forgot. Shout out to Shaquille. Shaquille told me he'll be tuning in.
Okay.
So.
Shout out to Shaquille.
I was sitting at the beginning, but it slipped my mind. But yeah.
Yes.
I know you're listening. So
shout out to Shaquille. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you all of you who tuned in tonight for another episode of Girl Talk. Sorry, Pleasure Pulse. And thank you, Deluma, as usual, for being such a willing guest and giving me some things to think about. So let's all go home and think and reflect.
and pray.
and all of these things. So as usual, I'm going to wish you a pleasurable evening and say good night here. Bye.